Good day, everybody. I hope that you're well and also hope that you are having a good day so far. Today, we'll be doing our grade 5 English lesson on relative pronouns. And before we start, we're going to log on to aplusstudents.ca. Once you've logged on to aplusstudents.ca with our username as well as our password, and then we're going to select the subject of English language arts. We're doing grade 5. And then we're going to scroll down up until we get to our chapter of relative pronouns. So, relative pronouns. All right. So, our chapter is relative pronouns. Our subject is English language arts. We're doing grade 5. And the lessons that we are going to be focusing on under the chapter of relative pronouns is to identify relative pronouns, and we're going to use relative pronouns such as who and whom. All right. So when it comes to relative pronouns, firstly, a pronoun takes the place of a noun. So a pronoun takes the place of a noun, right? And we do have different pronouns. But now, today, we're going to be focusing on relative pronouns. And a relative pronoun, right? It introduces a dependent. So it introduces a dependent or relative clause that describes a noun or describes a pronoun. And when it comes to relative pronoun, right? The five main relative pronouns are words like who, whom, whose, which, and that. We are only going to be focusing on the relative pronouns of who and whom today. All right. And if we look at an example or examples, the example says the woman or the woman who lives next door grows tomatoes in her garden. So the woman who lives next door grows tomatoes in her garden. Who lives next door? And the next one says Peter, whom you met yesterday. Not who you met yesterday. Because if you, for example, say who's somebody who you live with, then you can say the woman who lives next door or who you live with. But now we're going to the next one, which says Peter, who you did, whom you met yesterday, has four younger brothers. And the next one says, Emily, whose. You see, we are using relative pronouns, and that basically is showing us how we can use it by in the form of examples. So, Emily, whose hair is quite long, likes wearing braids. Whose. And then the next one says, I just read Janet's new book, which, if we're referring to things, which came out last month. Which. And then the last one says, this is the dress that I wore to my uncle's wedding. This is that dress that I wore. So when it comes to things, right? And then we use words like which and that. And if we're referring to someone or things that belongs to someone, then we use words like who and whom and whose. All right. So keeping in mind, right? Remember we said that pronouns, it takes the place of a noun. All right. And remember, when it comes to relative pronouns, right, it introduces the dependent, which is a relative or a relative, but it introduces a dependent clause that describes a noun or it describes a pronoun. All right. And remember, when it comes to relative pronouns, we have five main relative pronouns. We are only going to be focusing on who and whom today, but we have five relative pronouns, which is who, it is whom, whose, which, and that. And we need to know how and when to use it. If we're referring to things like objects or things that the person has, then we use which and that. But then who, whom, and whose refers to things that the person specifically does. All right. So now we're going to aplusstudents.ca. All right. So now we're going to aplusstudents.ca and we're going to identify relative pronouns. Remember, we said it's a dependent clause, relative pronoun. All right. And we already explained or went over what a relative pronoun is, where we said that it introduces a dependent or a relative clause that describes a noun or describes a pronoun. All right. So now we're going to look at an activity, right? And then we're going to our test. Because we now need to select the correct relative pronoun. It's actually not even giving us sentences. All right, but anyways, it's not giving us sentences. But here it says the relative pronoun is who. It says Ronnie, who loves to experiment with new flavors. So who is our relative pronoun? Took cooking classes in Thailand. Who? All right. And then here we have, are you happy with the people whom we elected? So whom is our relative pronoun. And that restaurant will serve the dessert like that. Not like who, not like that. All right, now we're going to our test where we are going to select the relative pronoun within the sentence. It says Bruce has an excellent memory which serves him well on the tests. Which one is correct? Bruce has an excellent memory which serves him well on tests. So we need to choose the correct one. The correct relative pronoun. Is it Bruce has an excellent memory which serves him well on tests? Which one is correct? All right. And if we were to choose the correct one, then yes, we will choose option one, two, three, four, five, six. Is option six, which is which. Well done. Which is correct? Option six. It says Ronnie, who loves to experiment with new flavors, took cooking classes in Thailand. We now need to select the relative pronoun within that sentence. So Ronnie, who loves to experiment with new flavors, took cooking classes in Thailand. We need to say which one is the correct option. All right. And if we were to choose the correct option, then yes, we will say Ronnie, who. So who loves to experiment? Yes, well done. Who is correct? The next one says, we took a ferry to Ellis Island, which is a popular tourist spot. We took a ferry to Ellis Island, which is a popular spot, a tourist spot. We need to say what we need to identify or select the relative pronoun. All right, yes. And if we were to choose the correct option, we would say which is option 8, is the relative pronoun. Which. Well done. Does the restaurant still serve the dessert that I like? Does the restaurant still serve the dessert that I like? We need to select the relative pronoun. All right, so we need to choose the correct option. All right, and if we were to choose the correct option, then yes, that I like that is correct. Well done. That is correct. Now the next one, select the relative pronoun. It says, I'm not familiar with the route that Bridget suggested. So I'm not familiar with the route that Bridget suggested. We need to choose the relative pronoun. All right, and if we were to select the relative pronoun, that is our relative pronoun. Well done. All right, so now we're going to use relative pronouns who, and we're going to use relative pronouns whom. So we're going to use who and whom. And once again, we say that a relative pronoun introduces a dependent or a relative clause that describes the noun or describes a pronoun. And relative pronouns, right? So the relative pronouns, which is who and whom, they give information about people. So they give information about people. All right. So when we say that words like who or the relative pronouns who and whom, it gives us information about people. And in order for us to figure out whether to use who or whether to use whom, you need to reset the dependent clause with a personal pronoun, like your name or so on. If the clause uses a subject pronoun, he, she, or they, then use who. All right. So we say that words or with to figure out whether to use either who or whether to use whom, you need to reset the dependent clause with the personal pronoun. And if the clause uses a subject pronoun, which is like he or she or they, then we use the word who. And if the clause uses an object pronoun, him, her, or them, then we use whom. And if we look at an example, right? The woman who lives next door grows tomatoes in her garden. So the woman who lives next door grows tomatoes in her garden. At the same as saying she lives next door. The next one says Peter, whom you met yesterday, has four younger brothers. All right. So, which means that if we want to say Peter, whom we met yesterday, has four younger brothers, so which means that we met him yesterday. All right. So we can now, before we go on to our test, where we are going to identify who or whom. So before we go into our test, we're going to do an activity. We need to complete the sentence with the best relative pronoun. It says Miss Mendoza consulted the accountant. Do we say who her business partner suggested or whom her business partner suggested? Which one is correct? Who or whom? So we need to say Miss Mendoza consulted the accountant. Do we say whom her business partner suggested, or do we say who a business partner suggested? Which one is correct? All right. And if we were to choose the correct relative pronoun, and then yes, whom, well done, whom her business partner suggested. So whom, well done, is correct. Whom is correct. The next one says Janet wanted a kayaking instructor. So kayaking instructor, do we say who or do we say whom? Had plenty of experience working with beginners. All right. And if we were to choose the correct option, then yes, we will say Janet wanted a kayaking instructor who had plenty of experience working with beginners. So well done. Who is correct? All right. The next one says the chief. So the chief, do we say whom? All right. So we can then say that the chef, do we say whom or do we say the chef who? The chef whom or who? All right. And if we were to choose the correct option, we'll say the chef whom I took a cooking class from, studied in Paris. So well done. So now we're going to our test where we are going to choose either who or we're going to choose whom. All right. And we said a person, do we say who or a person whom has a toothache should consult a dentist immediately. So a person, do we say who has a toothache should consult a dentist immediately, or whom has a toothache should consult a dentist immediately. All right. So we can say a person, do we say a person who or a person whom has toothache should consult a dentist immediately. Well done. Who is correct? We need to select the best pronoun. The Olympic divers represent the United States, will likely earn medals. So the Olympic divers, do we say who or do we say whom? So the Olympic divers, do we say who or whom represent the United States, will likely earn medals? Who or whom? All right. And then if we were to choose the correct option, the Olympic divers, let's try whom. Oh, it's actually who, sorry. It's who represents the United States. Sorry about that. All right. And then the last one. What is the last one? The chef. Do we say the chef? Whom or who I took cooking classes from, studied in Paris. So we can say the chef whom or who I took classes from, studied in Paris. Ah, guys, it's actually whom. All right, so this is the end of our lesson on relative pronouns. We said relative pronouns, it basically shows the dependent clause or the relative clause within a sentence. And we have five relative pronouns, which is who and whom and which, that, and there's another one, right? That is our relative pronouns. And it basically shows and which. That's our relative pronouns. All right, so this is the end of our lesson on relative pronouns. Thank you very much for joining the class, and I really hope you're going to have a good day further. Goodbye.